Speaking of Cleveland athletes, we had a heartfelt passing away of an all-time great with the Cleveland Browns, Mr. Jim Brown. Do you have any words that
Yeah,
you want to add?
Jim Brown is a major loss. He's not just maybe the most identifiable Cleveland Brown, but he was a national star. He was in films. He was an
Mm-hmm.
incredible advocate for civil rights, the face of the organization for a large number of years since he played. And when he played, he did things that no running back had done before or since.
Yeah, I mean, this guy, not only football, but I mean, I'm just like laughing. He was in Any Given Sunday. He was in The Running Man with Arnold Schwarzenegger. The civil rights stuff was really great because he did so much for black athletes. Because back then, this was the stories where he'd be on the road and they would say, "We have a hotel for you down the street." And Jim Brown would say, "No, the Cleveland Browns stick together." And Paul Brown, the owner of the Browns, a lot of Browns in this sentence here, would back him. And that kind of led to a lot of the equality or more equality we're seeing amongst athletes now traveling on the same bus, on the same planes, et cetera, that we take for granted today that weren't always the case back when he played. You know, we talk about Jackie Robinson as one of the big, color breaking into color bearing baseball. And I think Jim Brown did lot of that for football. His accolades on the field were incredible. I mean, I believe in 8 seasons he led the league in seven of them in rushing, and he averaged over 5 yards per carry for his entire career. I mean, this guy was everything. I mean, playing from 57 to 65. I mean, he had an 1,800 yards season in 14 games. I mean, that's pretty good. I mean, imagine the fantasy stats on that if you had him 1,800 yards and 12 touchdowns, man. He averaged 6.4 yards per carry that year in the 63. Would the Browns win four AFL championships, I believe? It was pre Super Bowl era. And I believe that the Jim Brown's led Browns was the last team in Cleveland to win a championship before LeBron did it, with the Cavs in his second stint, I believe. So I mean, that's just goes to show what a shadow he cast over Cleveland and how great he was.
You were right. They had NFL championships. They had four in the 40s, which were not Jim Brown.
Yeah,
Then they
he started
had
this up.
then they had 50, 54, 55, and 64.
Okay. Yeah, 64 was a Jim Brown one. And I mean, looking at his stats, he only failed to break 1,000 yards twice. And that was his rookie year at 942. And one year where he had 996, missed it by 4 yards. And this is playing 14 game seasons or 12 game seasons early in his career. In fact, the first time he didn't break 1,000 yards was a 12 game season. Heck, he had a 1,500 yards in 12. I mean, that's credible when you look at what we're doing now. And I know the today's NFL, they don't run the ball as much, but they also don't key off on stopping the run. And we also play, 17 game seasons now, not 12 or 14 like they did in Jim Brown's era. And that's incredible. And in my opinion, as a pure running back, like it's him or Barry Sanders as the best pure runners that I've seen game film on. Obviously, I wasn't old enough to see him play in person. I was old enough to see Barry. That kind of leads me to another segment where he's an all-time great. And I don't want to debate the top 10 lists or whatever, but we could just narrow it down to a Mount Rushmore and just who's your top four of all time? I mean, I've already said two of them. I think Scary Barry from Detroit and Jim Brown from Cleveland are two slam dunk top three running backs, in my opinion. And they're the
I
two best
agree
pure
with you
runners.
there. I agree, but I before we do that, I do want to touch a little bit more on
Okay.
Jim Brown. And you're right, he is an incredible player. And one of the things that jumped out at me when I was looking at him is in the 1950s and 60s, he was 6'2", 232 pounds,
He
which
would hold up now.
today, which today we consider that almost too big to be a running back.
I was gonna say he's like AJ Dillon size.
Exactly. So to see him just rumbling through defenses, and he could still run away from people,
Mm-hmm.
but nobody wanted to see Jim Brown coming at them in an era when 6'2", 6'3", 6'4" was huge.
It's crazy to think that, usually when we debate greatest of all times and stuff, we discount people of the yesteryears because people have gotten bigger, stronger, faster as we got better workout routines, supplements, etc. And the fact that his stats would make him a big running back today, I can't imagine what it would have been like trying to stop him in 1962, you know.
Yeah, he was also a huge film actor. I mean, was he Laurence Olivier? No, but he definitely was one of the biggest African American actors in his era, as well as being a football player. He started mostly action movies, but he was
Mm-hmm.
eventually getting lead roles. He was in a film called The Split in 1968, which was just a dramatic leading role. He did a prison film for MGM in 1969 called Riot. He was a Marine captain in Ice Station Zebra. Just classics in his filmography.
I mean, he was even on TV shows, iconic ones like TJ Hooker and Knight Rider and Chips in the 80s.
In 1969, he even had a role for 20th Century Fox in a film called 100 Rifles, where he was actually billed over Burt Reynolds and Raquel Welch.
Wow, that's incredible. And I know for me, I always remember him as Fireball and Running Man. I think was he the?
Yeah.
I mean, I love that movie. Underrated Schwarzenegger. Wasn't he the defensive coordinator in Any Given Sunday? His last role was Draft Day, which I know we just had the draft a few weeks ago. So I was rewatching that. I forgot who he played, to be honest. I think he played himself. But it's just kind of funny to see that, because Draft Day was the Browns GM or whatever, the pancake eating mother effers or whatever that weird iconic line is from the movie. But yeah, I mean, his film career, when like you point out, like his first role went back to 1964, which I believe he retired in 63. So he went right into it. No, he retired in 65. Sorry, that was last year. So he actually had a little overlap. Really long film career. If he started in 64 and went all the way to 2014, I mean, that's a long career even for an actor, much less an athlete converted to an actor.
And we also can't say enough about his civil rights work, especially in the African American community. If you grew up in Northeast Ohio, you knew who Jim Brown was and you respected what the guy was doing. He had the Cleveland Summit. He had
Mm.
meetings with Muhammad Ali to try to rally people behind the civil rights movement. He was behind he founded the Negro Industrial Economic Union, later called the Black Economic Union, to help minority owned businesses and develop more of them. Any one of these spheres would make Jim Brown an all time historical figure. What's amazing is Jim Brown, as a face of the Cleveland Browns, did all three.
This is Joe Smith from the Midwest Football Podcast. Please remember to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. It all helps us grow our show. Look for our full show, too, anywhere you find podcasts. Links below.